James Kaufman, World News Report today. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been in and out of a geomagnetic storm all evening into this morning. This has been caused by the equatorial coronal hole. What equatorial means is it actually passes through the equator of the sun. I know many people don't know that. I thought that I would at least let you guys know when people say equatorial coronal hole, that means it actually is not in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. It's in both hemispheres. And that's what we're dealing with here. Now, this was a thin coronal hole that formed recently, and we'll take a look at it. You can see we got up to a G1 geomagnetic storm on our estimated planetary KP index for about 6 hours. And it looks like we were in a geomagnetic disturbance for about 3 hours before that. Now we're seeing a disturbance still on the college index, but for the most part, we made it through the solar winds that were associated with the coronal hole. We'll take a look at how fast those actually got up to and how long they lasted in just a moment on Discover. Now, the real news is we're facing a G2 geomagnetic storm later today that was caused by an M-class solar flare just the other day. We'll look at that as well. All right, jumping over to GOES Solar Ultraviolet Images. This is GOES 19, 195 angstroms. You can see that equatorial coronal hole. Although it's not a hole, it's more of a line. And we got peppered by some of the Earth-facing solar winds coming from that missing canopy on the surface of our sun. And it looked like we got peppered for about 9 hours. Now, taking a look at the overall sun, the Earth-facing solar disk, we have quite a few sunspot groups that are Earth-facing, but none of them are overly complex at this time. Now, we have had some M-class solar flares, and at least one of them lifted a coronal mass ejection that should impact Earth later this afternoon. They're looking for a G2 geomagnetic storm from that, and we'll take a look at that as well. All right, although we've seen several M-class solar flares, I believe what we're dealing with later this afternoon will be this simple M1.01 solar flare. It was Earth-facing, and it did lift a light to medium coronal mass ejection, and that would be earthbound, directly Earth-facing, as a matter of fact. We've had some strong C flares after that, but nothing to speak of, and we had flares prior to that as well, but they were not going to be Earth-facing, or they didn't lift CME's coronal mass ejections from the surface of our sun. So I believe that we're looking at this solar flare right here. They're calling it an M1.06. I have it as an M1.01, I believe. We'll check it out. That occurred, just FYI, in the morning Friday, so less than 48 hours ago. And that would put us, well, in line for that inbound hit later this afternoon, as discussed. Taking a real quick look at that NOAA KP index breakdown, February 15th, 16th, and 17th. That forecast is, well, showing that G2, and they're expecting that right about now into this evening. And this other impact you see here is going to be from that C flare, believe it or not, that also lifted a faint coronal mass ejection in the direction of Earth. Over to our Discover satellite that sits out at Lagrange Point 1 million miles in orbit above Earth. It's a geostationary satellite, which means it stays in the same place even when Earth is spinning, etc. Although it does move as we slowly go around Earth once a year. It moves along with Earth, stays between Earth and the sun. What do we see? Well, our shields are trying to be up. They were down here when you see this in purple here. When the red line goes above zero, our shields are basically up. That's a good thing. And that's going to help fight off any type of plasma or solar winds. We also, well, we had a really good northern angle to our shields, but we've lost that, and now we're down to a southern angle, which is not good news. We briefly saw 5 minutes or less of plasma here. I guess this was pushed ahead by the solar winds. And plasma has been minimal all day long, as you can see. I'm talking about in the 1 and 2 and 3 range. Now what we have had are solar winds increase from 400 up to about 750, 749 right there. And you can see temperatures increased along with it. The big increase is right here. So we got 718 right here. 749 I think is the standout here. And so that is the coronal hole, or coronal line, I guess we're going to call it this time. And that's the solar winds that were generated by our sun from the missing canopy, that created the coronal hole. Now, when we get hit by the coronal mass ejection, we should see plasma impact Earth. That has not occurred yet, and we are awaiting that possible impact. Now, we did see solar winds go to 750. They're hanging out right around 700, 703 right there. There's a spike there. Looks like 789, another spike there. So we're still seeing solar winds come from that coronal line or hole. And they haven't let up quite yet. We should see the plasma push them down if it does in fact come in, i.e. the coronal mass ejection does impact Earth. All right, we just looked at plasma. We discussed that it was, well, there wasn't much of it. It looks like it's hanging out between about 0 and 3 centimeters cubed. The space weather threshold is 10 plus, and we're expecting maybe 15 to 20 centimeters cubed of plasma. We did see a couple of anomalies, but they were just for a minute or two earlier in the day, probably associated with the solar winds being pushed in. So we have no plasma right now as of yet, but we are expecting to be hit by coronal mass ejection, which I will show you on NASA's Parker Spiral. If our BZ stays north, which it wants to do, above zero, this plasma shouldn't affect us whatsoever. But if it were to drop below and get into the negatives, then it would affect us quite a bit. So those shields are really important, especially when they're as weak as they are currently. All right, this is the CME that we think is inbound, and this might be the lighter impact tomorrow. They're expecting maybe a geomagnetic disturbance. We'll have to see if we picked them right, but I'm pretty sure that we have. Very little activity on our Earth-facing solar disk. Over to HMI intensogram, well, we've got a bunch of simple coronal holes all in the northern hemisphere here lined up. Nothing is beta gamma, and nothing is delta class. Everything is simple, and we have a very, very slight chance of any large flares occurring today. Now, this could change at any moment, and I will keep you updated. And over to our NASA Parker Spiral. We'll first look at these winds here that just hit us, and then we're going to look at this plasma here, bang, that hits us at some point on the 15th, as you can see. It doesn't look like it's going to be awful. It looks like maybe a little bit further out it's stronger, but Earth is this little yellow ball here, and you can see that it impacts us on the 15th. And we just got hit by these solar winds. Well, they're gone now. These solar winds right here. And you can see that Earth was right there. And they weren't very strong solar winds either. But that's exactly what's going on. There's nothing after that. I guess there's this slight CME that was lifted by the M flare that we have to deal with. But I wouldn't expect anything but a geomagnetic disturbance, especially if our shields stay together. With that said, that is a complete space weather update for the day. If anything does develop, of course I will update you. With that said, God bless. Please share. Please give us a thumbs up. Please buy us a cup of coffee. Please give us a super chat. Please always remember, anything's possible in Bizarro World. God bless you all.